So, hey everyone, welcome to Pearl by Heartfulness, and I'm Lakshmi, your host. This is the Heartful Leader Series Session 4, and you're watching and listening to Playing the Long-Term Part 2, Building Great Relationships. Now, Ravi, who is my co-host and speaker in the very first introductory session, did mention that the foundation for influence in a workplace is trust and relationship. And yes, we did have a session on trust, which was a previous session with Hester. And by the way, it was a fabulous session. I would recommend you guys to go and check it out. It's available on our website, YouTube, and Facebook. Just look out for Heartfulness Pearl, and you'll find it there. Now, today we're going to be discussing the importance of nurturing workplace relationships and how to succeed in doing this over the long term. Now, quick housekeeping. Of course, this is a recorded session, but please feel free to interact with us through the Facebook comment section. We'd love to interact with you. Ravi and myself, we will be online on the day, and we would be happy to take your questions. Also, do let us know how you feel about this Heartful Leader series. Now, Ravi here is an Atlanta-based executive serving as Chief Technology Officer at USA Technologies, based in Malvern, Pennsylvania. He's a regular public speaker on leadership, technology, and wellness topics, and also a public speaking coach. He's a heart-based meditation instructor and is passionate about applying meditation to improve workplace relationships and productivity. A very good friend of mine. I've always felt comfortable and enjoyed working with him. So welcome back, Ravi. Good to see you again.
Hi, Lakshmi. It's great to see you, and really excited about the session we're going to do today here.
Same here, Ravi. So tell me, what's so big deal about this workplace relationship and, nurturing a good relationship? What does it really mean in a professional context?
Yeah, the question takes me back to when I started my career out of business school as a young executive, just very arrogant about the hard skills that I had acquired in business school and that I would apply and grow my career. And, when you get to the real world, you find out that it's not what you can do, but who you know. And sometimes it's not just who you know, but it's who you know and do they know what you can do. So, you almost have to, you sort of had to connect the dots between having good skills and good capabilities, but also having good relationships with people that can be influencers, mentors, sponsors that can take your career forward. And that's sort of the first place where, it was like a reckoning of learning the importance of relationships in the workplace and of cultivating them.
The reality, right? The reality in a workplace hits in, right?
Reality bites.
What constitutes a good work relationship? So,
there is no perfect answer to what's a good or a great workplace relationship. I kind of look at it as a garden, right? You have a garden, you have all kinds of things that you've planted there. And there are some types of plants that require a lot of maintenance, that require fertilizers, that require watering every day. And there are some that just, you can leave them out and there's,
they grow wild.
Whether it's sunny, whether it's rainy, whatever it is, they just grow. They're like weeds, right? And right. So even in our workplace, we always find that whether it's subordinates or our bosses or our peers, there are some who are just quote unquote low maintenance. You barely interact with them, but when you do interact with them, the interactions are great. And the professional chemistry is there. There is mutual respect and admiration and cooperation, and it's easy to collaborate. It's easy to get things done. And then there are some where you find that it just takes every interaction is full of friction. It's like, I say go north and the other person says go south. And it's almost like brains are wired differently. We just are looking at the world from two different types of lenses, and we are just not able to collaborate. It's an argument each time. Those relationships take a lot of nurturing, and they take nurturing before you really need the relationships, right? And that's one of the things people miss is the hard work in nurturing a relationship has to happen before you really need that relationship. So you kind of have both kinds.
So is there some strategies that you would suggest to nurture a relationship?
Absolutely. So one of the frameworks I learned in some leadership training that I've been to, gosh, I want to say 10 years ago. And this instructor did a fabulous job of explaining what happens. You have all these different types of frameworks like the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the DISC, the HBDI, which is the Herman Brain Dominance Index. So you have all these frameworks that try to explain to people how everyone is different, they think about things differently, and how do you work with different types, right? So that's one place where we get some clues. But the better answer that I found was that there are ways in which people that people introduce toxins in relationships. And those toxins are at the simplest level there when you have contempt for someone or when you criticize someone, right? Or when you become defensive, or when you sort of, try to put a barrier around you. And in the professional workplace, we always see this. We see that there are some individuals or even teams, and this can even be culture within teams, where you feel, that group or this person, they're always defensive. They always say no to everything. They don't want to do anything, right? And we have those situations. And then you have some others where you say, they're always criticizing everything. There is no pleasing them, or there is no meeting that bar. And then there are other cases where it's judgment, where it's contempt. It's just, Harry always has these ideas that go nowhere in a hurry, right? So these statements, these behaviors are toxins to relationship. They take a relationship to a negative level. And on the contrary side, there are things that can be like vaccines, or that can be have the opposite effect, which are things like when you praise somebody, when you encourage someone, when you sort of have an interaction that is positive in some other way, when you do a favor, which is unexpected, right? Or when you go out of your way to notice something that someone has said and highlight it. So this concept of trying to balance the toxins with things that can be almost vaccines to prevent damage in a relationship. Some of the best stuff that I learned in nurturing it.
Wonderful, Ravi. When you're saying go out of the way and help somebody, being empathetic really goes a long way, right? And helping somebody maybe who needs the help in the team. Now, do you think communication play an important role in building a good relationship? What are your thoughts on that?
Communication and also being heartful. And it looks like there's a big storm coming down here. So,
is that right? Okay, I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah, thunder in the background. That's what that is. But being heartfelt in communication and being empathetic, there's just no substitute to that, because there are people who say nice things but don't mean them, and it doesn't go very far. Everyone is smart enough to detect that, to know that, to feel that. So being authentic in empathy, being authentic in communication, and expressing goodwill is absolutely essential. Right? It doesn't go very far.
True. I couldn't agree more, actually. Now, how about, being centered? Does what we feel inside reflect on our behavior and in our interaction and our relationships? What do you think of that?
For sure. In some of the previous sessions, we covered, with various speakers, the concepts of how our inner state, and it's exactly what you said, Lakshmi, about being centered. Our inner state reflects in our outer behavior. If I've had a really bad argument with my wife this morning and I show up at work, I'm a human being, right? If someone comes in and challenges me on something, my tendency to snap at them will be higher than normal, right? And so everything that we have in our inner state reflects in our outer behavior. Now, when I snap at this person, I'm damaging that relationship. So that that outer behavior has a direct impact on not just the trust that I've built, but also the relationships that I have. And so you're right, it's the real work starts inside and then reflects outside.
That's right. And being self-aware of that is also greatly helps, right? There was something that I wanted to ask you, looking at the write-up that you had sent, Ravi. You mentioned about the framework of the cycle of a relationship, a workplace relationship. I was thinking of that to be something like a cheat sheet. If we knew what a cycle of a workplace relationship could be, then we can better handle situations or issues when they arise, right? Do you want to elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Just like anything else, a relationship has this whole life cycle, all the way from getting acquainted to getting together, working together on something, collaborating on different things. And inevitably there are times when we fall apart a little bit, where it's the old saying of familiarity breeds contempt. Sooner or later, if you know somebody too long, you start also finding the things that we don't like about each other. And,
right.
and so a little bit of a wedge is driven. It's just natural.
That is a phase, right? Yes.
There is a phase, and we need to recognize it, that in any relationship, workplace, personal, doesn't matter, but this is bound to happen. And being aware of this and knowing how to deal with it, and knowing that that's when you need to put that special effort, create a circumstance to collaborate, create a circumstance to do a favor, right? That is very important. The other part of a relationship is sometimes we just, there is an incident that happens, or an altercation, or you just have to do something which is not in the interest of the other person for whatever reason, and you just fall apart. In those cases, there is a repair required. Now you're trying to go from negative to neutral to positive, not from neutral to positive. And so there are a whole set of strategies and ways in which we can repair that relationship and nurture it further, right? So that's broadly a life cycle. And eventually, you reach a point where, maybe you work for another company, or the other person has moved on and you're not in touch as much. And so the relationship naturally kind of, disconnects a little bit, although it's interesting how small the world has become and how we all, tend to bump back into each other. Right.
Now, you mentioned about, those relationships that, from neutral, they get to worse. Now, is there a remorse? Can you really repair such relationships?
It's one of the hardest things to do, but it's also one of the most satisfying things, when you're successfully able to do it, right? And my initial approach used to be that, okay, I'm never going to be able to work with this person, so let me just find ways to work around them, right? The initial part of my career, that used to be my playbook, is, okay, this relationship is not working out, let's move on. And I just over time realized the lost opportunity and what I was missing. So really dug deep. Also was fortunate enough to get some great mentorship on how do you address that. And it begins with, in a lot of cases, it begins with acknowledging the challenge, apologizing. A heartfelt, sincere apology has such power. Most of the time we don't even imagine how powerful that can be. And then asking for help. What we don't realize is, we think if a relationship has gone bad, the only thing we can do is maybe help the other person or support them, and that's the way we can rebuild. But a lot of times the answer is asking them for help.
True.
Because it's so easy. We don't realize this, but it's easier to offer help than to take help. And if we can be the one that's vulnerable and ask for help and take help, it's very powerful in rebuilding those relationships.
Beautiful words there, Ravi. In fact, I was just thinking about that. And how many times do we always think it's the other person who needs the help, right? So we forget to include ourselves in the whole situation. We're very well said there, actually. Now, in a workplace, sometimes we do have hundreds of contacts. Now, is there some relationship which do you think is important and we need to nurture it more than the others?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times people pay a lot of attention to either their subordinates or their direct teams, or they pay a lot of attention to their boss or a lot of attention to their peers. I think it's a balance that's very important. And and what I would encourage everyone to do is just ask yourself, is your natural tendency to lean in one direction a lot? Are you constantly working on the relationship with your boss, but not paying enough attention to your team, right?
Right.
There is this old saying of the definition of a jerk is somebody who kisses up and kicks down, right? And so we all see in professional world, there are a lot of people, very good relationship with the boss, but completely poor behavior with everybody who reports to them. And they don't last very long in today's world, right? As over time, they'll get weeded out. And so to be a good, heartful leader, I would say a balance across all those degrees is essential of relationships.
Respect everybody around, right? Not just the bosses, but also the subordinates.
For sure.
In a nutshell, right?
And I think it also speaks volumes to the character of a person when you observe them and see how do they behave, with the lowest levels in the organization, whether it's a janitor or somebody who's how do they behave with administrative staff, and how do they behave with different people versus the CEO and the CFO. When you observe that, it speaks volumes to the character of a person also.
That's right. And that goes a long way. And truly, that is a meaningful relationship. Beautiful there. Ravi, I did receive some questions from a few people for this webinar already. And I'm going to ask you those now. But if those listening in this webinar through Facebook Live, you can interact with us. Like I said earlier on, please key in your questions in the comment section, and we'll be happy to take those questions. This is a question from Katia. She's from Canada. At these strange times of working remotely, how to maintain or strengthen workplace relationships?
It's harder. And, it's harder because, Zoom and other virtual interactions can only go so far. What I would encourage you to do is to one-up the communication as much as possible. And what do I mean by that, right? So by one-up, I mean, if your tendency would be to send a text message or a Slack message or any kind of a message, instead send an email, which is a little bit more long form. And if your tendency is to send an email, instead pick up the phone and make a phone call, and have a verbal interaction. And if your tendency is to have a phone call, try to go do a video call instead, right? Because the way our communication and interaction works, almost 80% is all body language and voice and verbal tone and things like that. Things which have nothing to do with the actual words or the content. It's non-verbal communication, as we call it. And if you don't do these types of interaction, you miss out on it. So the short answer would be one up your communication, try to do as much video interaction in the absence of in-person.
Thank you, Ravi. Now, this is from Sonia, and she's from UK. Even with good relationships, how should bad news, layoffs, etc., be handled with subordinates?
With empathy, Lakshmi, as you mentioned earlier, I think there's no substitute to that. And if we are able to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person, truly feel what they're feeling, and then express that, there is no better way to handle, especially bad news. The other formula I've always found helps me is, if it's bad news, do not delay. Deliver it as possible. Good news can wait, but if it's bad news, deliver it immediately.
I like that. Yes, I like that. And empathy, very, very well said, actually. It's a very heartfelt answer. Now, there was a similar question, and this is from Sri Priya, Bangalore, and she's asking, if you are in middle management and the upper managements keep making changes that are disruptive to the team, what is the best way to manage that?
It's a classic problem, and it's a standard problem. And middle management tends to be in many ways that buffer zone, where you're often in the unfortunate situation of shielding your team from all the churn that's happening while you are taking it. So it's in that sense, it's a very tough zone to operate in. And the best way I would say is, on the one side, when it comes to what you have to pass on to your team, you have to be empathetic, but don't make the mistake of carrying the entire burden of the world on your own shoulders. You do have to pass it on, and you should do it with empathy, but you should do it. You shouldn't try to absorb it all. And on the second side, I think it's valid and useful to respectfully push back when needed to senior management, and just have conversations around not just saying, hey, don't do this, and I'm overworked and I'm overloaded and this is not fair. That helps no one. But when you have the conversation in terms of, here is the consequence of when you change priorities 5 times in this given within a single week, this is what that does to us as a team and as an organization, and this is what we don't get done. If you can translate it in terms of consequences, then a lot of times you can affect behavioral change even upwards, not just downwards. And again, relationships matter. You have to have that relationship to be able to have that conversation.
That's right. That's right. Now, if we assume that our workplace is an extension of ourselves, how do we build a positive inner self that extends into the workplace? And this is from Rohit, India.
So Rohit, that's a great question. Now there is a lot of increasing interest in a field of study, which all has to do with conscious leadership and conscious organizations. In simplest terms, the concept is that we have an individual consciousness, but there is also a consciousness of, within a family, within an organization. So a particular company, for example, has its own collective consciousness, which simply put is the sum of the consciousness of all the people that work there. Mm-hmm. So as we do things like centering ourselves, being more mindful, practicing meditation, for example, the heartfulness meditation practice, we raise the level of consciousness that we have. We raise the level of empathy that we have. And when we do that, it's inevitable that that infects others around us, and it raises their level of consciousness. And hence, the company that we are working in, the division that we are working in, we effect a positive change in a very subtle, subliminal manner. And that's how you get there.
Beautiful answer, Ravi. And if that happens, productivity increases, everybody is happy, right? In a workplace. It's a wonderful answer. And I've observed as well that recently meditation or the self-care has become more and more prevalent in workplaces.
For sure.
As you say, meditation does help improve emotional well-being, and it helps one get centered. Maybe you need it before a meeting, or before you break a bad news to one of the co-workers at workplace. Now, you've set it up nicely for a meditation session. So let's try and do it. It'll last for about a few minutes or so. We welcome everybody to join us at this time. It'll be a guided session. So simply follow the instructions, and we'll talk later. So close your eyes. And let's begin with your toes. Wiggle your toes. Now feel them relax. Relax your ankles and feet. Feel the energy moving up from the Mother Earth through your ankles, relaxing the calf muscles, knees, thighs, and hips. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. Now relax your seating area, stomach, and waist. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. Now feel the energy in your back. From the top to the bottom, your entire back is relaxed. Breathe in, breathe out, and relax. Now relax your chest and shoulders. Feel your shoulders simply melting away. Now let the energy drain into your arms, relaxing the upper arms, lower arms, hands, all the way to the tip of the fingers. Both your arms are completely relaxed. Now relax the neck muscles. The energy is flowing upwards, relaxing the jaw, mouth, nose, cheeks, earlobes, eyes, forehead, all the way to the top of the head. Now feel how your whole body is completely relaxed. Now gently draw your attention to your heart. Imagine the source of light that's already in your heart is illuminating and pulling your attention inwards. If you're having distracting thoughts, gently brush them aside and treat them as passing clouds. Gently come back and keep your attention on the light in the heart. Stay still and quiet and absorbed in this thought until you hear me say, "That's all." That's all. Gently open your eyes and come back to the present moment. So welcome back, everyone. So this was just a short experiential session of the heartfulness meditation that Ravi also mentioned a while ago. Again, this is just a great tool that you can use to get a much needed break in between your busy day, just to clear your mind, perhaps. I know some of my friends who use it at lunch breaks, at coffee breaks. So try it out if you like it, and you can reach out to us at pearl@heartfulness.org if you'd like to take this further and try out this meditation. Now, coming back to you, Ravi, I just thoroughly enjoyed this session. It was a short but a lovely discussion with you on building great workplace relationships. Is there any last words of closing, Ravi?
I'd like to just summarize a couple of takeaways as I was pondering over things that we covered. One is, if you forget everything that we covered in this session, just remember that relationships can and will go through their ups and downs. And it's the downs when they require the maximum nurturing. And not every person thinks the way you do. And the ones that don't require more attention. I think if those two things are remembered, you are well on your way to be a heartful leader and build great workplace relationships. Thank you.
Excellent takeaway points, Ravi. I like that, actually, particularly the second one. So thank you again for giving those 2 points. As you said, if you forget all the rest, those are the 2 things that we can remember. And I was just thinking during my meditation, it's all coming back down to being human, right? Smile and compliment people you see on your way. And that's just a great way to start. So we wish you all the best, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. So Ravi and me, we're signing off. Take care. Bye for now.